The day the alien queen chose her husband began like any other in the glittering halls of the Orithian palace, yet it would become a day that would echo across galaxies for generations. The palace itself was a marvel of alien engineering, towers of crystal that captured the light of three suns and reflected it in colors no human eye had names for. Strange machines hummed quietly in every hall, and floating platforms carried couriers and servants effortlessly across vast chambers. Despite the grandeur, there was a sense of tension, as though the very air knew that something unusual was about to happen. The queen, Valoria, sat on her throne of polished obsidian, her presence commanding the attention of all. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver under the sunlight, and her eyes glowed faintly with an inner light, a mark of her royal bloodline. She was not just a ruler, she was a living legend, a being of intelligence and power unmatched in her civilization. Today, however, she faced a challenge she had never faced before. She had to choose a husband, a mate who would strengthen her rule and unite the factions of her empire. Her advisors, a council of the oldest and wisest Orithians, gathered around her. Each one was adorned in ceremonial robes that glimmered like starlight, their faces serious. "My queen," said Eldrin, the council leader, his voice as smooth as polished stone, "our records show that suitable mates from distant worlds have been gathered. They are warriors, strategists, diplomats. None, however, match the grace and intelligence of the Orithians." She had seen hundreds of alien races over the years, from the four-limbed Ritharians of the outer systems to the towering, winged Saurians. Each one was impressive in its own way, but none had yet sparked curiosity in her the way she desired. She wanted more than strength or skill. She wanted something different, something unexpected. The candidates were brought into the grand hall one by one. They moved with precision, bowing before her with gestures that spoke of submission and respect. Some spoke in melodic tones, others in harsh, guttural sounds that vibrated in the walls. Each demonstrated their abilities, from manipulation of energy to the command of small fleets. The queen watched, her expression calm, her mind calculating. Then a human was brought in. Marcus, as he was called, stepped into the hall with quiet confidence. Unlike the others, he wore no elaborate robes, no symbols of status. His uniform was simple, a muted gray that spoke of practicality rather than grandeur. He did not bow deeply, did not speak loudly, did not perform any elaborate display. He simply stood, shoulders back, eyes steady, and waited. The courtiers whispered among themselves. Humans were considered weak, fragile creatures barely able to survive their own planet, let alone contend with the complexities of the galaxy. Yet there was something in Marcus that drew the queen's gaze. He did not fidget, did not flinch under the scrutiny of hundreds of alien eyes. He seemed calm. He seemed aware. Valoria leaned forward slightly on her throne. "What is your name, human?" she asked. Her voice carried an authority that could command armies. "Marcus," he replied simply. His voice was clear and steady, with a tone that suggested patience and resolve. The advisors exchanged uneasy glances. "My queen," Eldrin said, his voice low, "this human is unremarkable. He shows no skill or power. Surely there are others more suitable for your choice." There was a certain intensity in his eyes, a sharpness that seemed to miss nothing. Unlike the other candidates who relied on display and spectacle, he offered only his presence. "Why do you wish to be chosen, human?" Valoria asked. Marcus paused, then spoke. "I do not wish. I am here because you have asked for candidates. I will do my duty if chosen, but I ask only to be judged fairly, not for my species, but for who I am." Over the next few hours, Marcus was tested. He solved complex strategic puzzles that had baffled the advisors, predicted outcomes of simulated battles with uncanny accuracy, and demonstrated an understanding of diplomacy that rivaled the most experienced negotiators in the Empire. Yet, he did all this quietly, without arrogance or showmanship. By the time the other candidates had completed their demonstrations, it was clear to everyone in the hall that Marcus was not merely a human. He was something far more formidable, though no one could yet name it. The courtiers murmured, some in disbelief, some in admiration. The queen remained calm, though a small smile touched her lips. "Eldrin," she said finally, her voice cutting through the whispers, "we have seen all the candidates. Speak truthfully. Who would strengthen our empire not with spectacle but with substance? He does not possess the obvious power of the other candidates, but his mind, his insight, his understanding of war and peace, he is exceptional." The queen had chosen a species that even her own advisors considered inferior. Some courtiers stepped back, unsure whether to protest or flee. Marcus stepped forward, bowing his head slightly. "I accept your choice," he said simply. "I will serve the Empire and uphold your rule." She had chosen him not because of expectation, not because of tradition, but because of instinct. There was something in him that even she could not yet fully understand. As the sun set over the crystalline towers, casting long shadows across the palace, the queen held a private audience with Marcus. They walked through quiet corridors, the hum of machinery filling the space between them. She spoke of her hopes for the empire, of the responsibilities of leadership, and of the challenges that awaited them. Marcus listened carefully, absorbing every word. He did not interrupt unnecessarily, but when he spoke, his words carried weight. He offered insights into strategy, diplomacy, and human resilience. Veloria found herself impressed, not just by his mind, but by the quiet strength he exuded. She realized that the human before her was not just a simple creature of flesh and bone. He was a mind honed by challenges, a survivor of unimaginable hardship. He carried the weight of a species that had endured countless wars, disasters, and near extinction, yet had emerged not broken, but stronger. The night grew late and the palace fell silent. Veloria and Marcus stood on a balcony overlooking the vast city below. The lights of the palace shimmered like stars fallen to the ground, and the three suns had dipped below the horizon, leaving trails of violet and gold. "You are unlike any being I have ever known," the queen said softly. "I chose you without fully understanding what I was choosing." She had chosen a human, thinking she understood him, and yet she felt that she had only just begun to uncover the depth of who he truly was. In the quiet of that moment, neither spoke of the future battles, the enemies that would come, or the galaxy that would soon take notice of this unlikely union. For now, there was only the understanding that something extraordinary had begun. The queen had chosen a husband, and unknowingly she had chosen a force that could change the course of history. As the first stars appeared in the twin skies above, Marcus turned and looked at the horizon, his mind already calculating, planning, predicting. He had survived wars that would have broken ordinary men, and now he faced a new challenge, one unlike any he had faced before. The difference was, this time he was not alone. The queen watched him, and for the first time in her long life she felt both awe and curiosity. She had chosen a human, a creature she thought would be fragile and compliant, yet she had no idea that she had chosen a war incarnate. And so the first chapter of their story closed, not with battle or victory, but with anticipation. The galaxy, vast and unknowable, held its breath. A human had entered the heart of an alien empire, chosen by its most powerful ruler, and the consequences would be unimaginable. The palace slept under the gentle glow of alien moons, but in the minds of the queen and her human, the night was alive with possibilities. The story of Marcus and Veloria had only just begun, and neither the stars above nor the worlds below would ever be the same again. The day after Marcus was chosen as the husband of Queen Veloria, the palace stirred with a mixture of excitement and quiet tension. The Orithian court had never seen anything like this. A human, a creature considered weak and fragile by most alien civilizations, had been elevated to the highest honor. Whispers followed Marcus through every hall he walked, some filled with doubt, others with curiosity. Even the most confident courtiers seemed unsure how to act around him. Marcus, however, did not seem to notice the attention. He moved through the palace with the same calm, measured steps as the day before. Every gesture he made was deliberate but unassuming. He studied the palace's structure, its mechanisms, and its routines. He asked questions not out of fear or confusion, but out of genuine interest. Every answer he received, every reaction he observed, became part of a mental map he was quietly building, a map of the empire he had only begun to understand. Queen Veloria watched him closely. She had expected awe, perhaps even hesitation, but she had not expected this quiet strength. Marcus did not seek to impress her with flashy demonstrations or alien technology. He simply existed in her world with a confidence that unsettled and fascinated her at the same time. She began to see, more clearly with each passing hour, that the human's power was subtle, hidden, but undeniable. That morning, the queen summoned Marcus to the council chamber. The chamber was enormous, circular, and lined with tall crystal columns that hummed faintly with energy. Council members, elders, and military advisors were already seated, their expressions formal but curious. The chamber's ceiling projected a holographic view of the galaxy, showing distant stars, planetary systems, and fleets in motion. "My husband," Veloria said, her voice calm but firm, "today you will witness the workings of my empire. Observe, learn, and speak if you have insight. Your perspective may yet prove valuable. He noticed patterns others overlooked, small inefficiencies in logistics, miscalculations in predicted enemy movements, and even subtle rivalries among the council members that could later become dangerous. At first, the council was skeptical. Who was this human to suggest changes to plans that had been developed over decades? And yet, each observation Marcus made was correct. Each suggestion, though delivered quietly and without ego, improved the council's understanding and decision-making. By the end of the session, even the most doubtful members had to acknowledge that the human's mind worked in ways they could not easily predict. After the council meeting, Valoria took Marcus through the palace's training grounds. These were not ordinary fields or gyms. They were simulations of entire battlefields, designed to train generals and warriors in strategy and tactics. Holographic armies moved in patterns that reflected real and theoretical scenarios, testing the abilities of those who walked among them. "Observe," Valoria said. "Many have trained here for years, few master it fully. Humans are said to be weak, yet you see how the simulations respond to your decisions." They did not rely on overwhelming force. Instead, they used timing, unpredictability, and understanding of both allies and opponents. The Queen was silent for a moment, her eyes narrowing slightly. She realized that Marcus's brilliance was not in strength or speed, but in adaptability. He understood conflict in a way few Orithians could, not because of superior technology, but because of experience, intuition, and human ingenuity. Word of his performance spread quickly through the palace. Servants, guards, and even visiting diplomats spoke in hushed tones about the human who could outthink the greatest strategists of the Orithian Empire. Some laughed it off, thinking the human would eventually fail. Others quietly began to study him, wondering how a species thought weak could possess such cunning. Over the next few days, Marcus was introduced to more of the palace's inner workings. He visited the Empire's archives, vast libraries filled with knowledge accumulated over millennia. He examined technological projects, learning what the Orithians had created and imagining ways they might be improved. He met the engineers and scientists, asking questions that seemed simple but revealed profound insights about efficiency and design. Despite his calm demeanor, Marcus's mind was never idle. He was calculating, predicting, and preparing. He considered threats not only from outside the empire but also from within. Court politics, rival factions, and jealous advisors could all become dangers if left unchecked. The Queen, though aware of her husband's intelligence, did not yet grasp the depth of his ability to see the undercurrents that ran beneath every conversation, every gesture, every decision. It was during a private meeting with Valoria that the first signs of his true nature began to reveal themselves. She had brought a problem to him, a rebellion in a distant system, one that had resisted traditional military approaches for years. The Queen expected advice, perhaps a clever plan. Marcus gave more than that. He outlined a strategy that used a small, specialized team rather than large armies. He proposed a combination of psychological tactics, precise strikes, and subtle manipulation of the rebels' resources. The plan was risky, but it minimized casualties and maximized efficiency. Valoria listened in awe. She had expected guidance, but what she saw was the mind of someone who had lived in war, someone who had survived battles that others could not imagine. "My Queen," Marcus said quietly, "humans are not strong in the ways you expect, but we survive, adapt, and find ways to win when the odds are against us. This is the advantage you hold in me." He taught small teams how to think unpredictably, how to anticipate opponents' moves, and how to use limited resources to maximum effect. His students were amazed. What seemed impossible at first, maneuvering entire simulated armies with a handful of units, became routine under his guidance. The Queen watched silently, often from a balcony or the edge of the training ground. She was struck by the way Marcus worked, not with arrogance but with quiet authority. The Orithians were used to displays of power, to leaders who commanded attention through dominance. Marcus required none of that. He relied on understanding, observation, and subtle guidance. Not everyone accepted him so easily. Some advisors whispered of human arrogance, questioning whether he truly understood the stakes. But when conflicts arose, when simulations and real scenarios tested his methods, Marcus was always proven correct. The doubters learned quickly that underestimating him was a dangerous mistake. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the palace, Marcus and Valoria walked through the quiet halls. The palace was peaceful, yet the queen sensed the tension beneath the surface. "Do you find this life strange?" she asked. "To be in a world so different from your own?" "That is what I do." And though the queen did not yet know it, he was already thinking several steps ahead, planning for conflicts that had not yet arrived. In the days that followed, rumors began to circulate across the empire. Whispers of the human husband who outwitted generals, who predicted events before they happened, who taught strategies that even the most experienced warriors could not anticipate. Some laughed, calling it exaggeration. Others quietly studied Marcus, trying to understand the secret behind his skill. Meanwhile, the queen found herself both fascinated and unsettled. She had married a human, expecting companionship and loyalty. Instead, she had discovered a mind unlike any she had ever encountered, a mind that saw the world not as it appeared, but as it could be changed, shaped, and controlled. And yet, for all his brilliance, Marcus remained humble. He never sought praise, never demanded attention, and never flaunted his abilities. He simply acted, calculated, and guided, letting results speak for themselves. In doing so, he earned respect, not through fear or power, but through competence, wisdom, and quiet authority. As another day ended, Valoria stood at her balcony watching Marcus walk among the palace guards, his movements calm, deliberate, and precise. She realized that she had underestimated the depth of human potential. The human she had chosen as a husband was more than a mate. He was a force that could change the empire, perhaps even the galaxy itself. She did not yet know the full extent of his capabilities, but she could feel it. The calm, quiet presence of Marcus was not weakness. It was strength, patience, and intelligence combined. And in that realization, the queen understood that the true story of her human husband had only just begun. The galaxy waited, unaware that a human was already reshaping the fate of an empire from within, quietly, deliberately, and with the mind of a strategist who had lived war and survived. The calm of the Orithian palace did not last long. Rumors from the outer systems had begun to reach the queen. A coalition of alien worlds, long at odds with each other, had united under a single banner. Their fleets were massive, their technology advanced, and their strategy brutal. The Orithian Empire, though powerful, had never faced an enemy quite like this. Valoria called an emergency council. The chamber, normally orderly, buzzed with tension. Holograms of fleets moved across the circular room, showing the coalition's advances. General Kale, the head of the Imperial military, spoke first, his voice sharp with urgency. "We are outnumbered. Our defenses are strong, yes, but their coordination is exceptional. If we meet them head-on, we risk total defeat." Valoria turned to him. "Marcus, you have observed our strategies and our systems. What do you suggest?" "Instead, we need to predict their patterns, exploit gaps in their coordination, and act with precision where they are weakest." He outlined a plan that used small, specialized units to intercept key targets, sabotage supply lines, and create confusion in the coalition's ranks. Each move was calculated to maximize impact while minimizing exposure to risk. General Kale's brow furrowed. "This is risky. The human's plan relies on assumptions about the enemy, if he misjudges them. Their strategy is predictable because it assumes the enemy will act as expected. We must act where they least anticipate. We use the element of surprise as our weapon." The human before her did not merely react to events. He calculated, anticipated, and shaped them. Over the next several days, Marcus worked tirelessly with small teams of Orithian officers. They ran simulations, practicing the tactics he had outlined. At first, the teams struggled. The Orithians were trained to think in terms of overwhelming force, not subtle maneuvers. Marcus guided them patiently, explaining timing, positioning, and the importance of observation. Slowly, the teams began to understand. Their movements became fluid, their decisions faster and more precise. The first real test came when scouts reported a coalition advance near the border of the outer systems. Marcus was given command of a small strike unit. He studied the terrain, the enemy's formation, and the timing of their patrols. Then, quietly, he executed the plan. The result was astonishing. Without firing a single unnecessary shot, his unit disrupted the enemy's supply lines, captured key intelligence, and disappeared before the coalition forces realized what had happened. The reports that reached the Queen were filled with astonishment. The human had outmaneuvered an entire fleet with a handful of soldiers. Valoria could hardly contain her amazement. She had married a human she believed to be unremarkable, yet he was already proving himself capable of feats she had never imagined. She began to see him not just as a husband, but as a force, an unpredictable, unstoppable force shaped by experience and cunning. Despite the success, Marcus remained calm. He did not celebrate. He analyzed every detail, noting what had worked, what could be improved, and how the enemy might respond next. His mind was a constant machine, calculating probabilities, predicting reactions, and preparing contingencies. Word of his victory spread throughout the empire. Soldiers whispered of the human who could outthink generals. Citizens spoke of his calm confidence, and even alien diplomats who had come to undermine the Queen's rule found themselves reconsidering their assumptions about humans. The Queen noticed something else, the bond between Marcus and the people around him. He earned respect not through fear or power, but through competence, insight, and quiet authority. Those who worked with him were inspired, motivated to achieve more, and their confidence in the empire grew. Valoria began to see a larger truth. Humans, underestimated for so long, possessed strengths the Orithians could not fully comprehend. One evening, Valoria and Marcus stood on the balcony of the palace, overlooking a city that stretched for miles, glowing under twin moons. The air was still, but the tension of impending war lingered. "You move as if the war has already begun," Valoria said softly. Marcus did not look at her immediately. "In war, one must always anticipate," he said. "It does not matter how strong your opponent is. What matters is understanding their decisions before they make them, seeing the possibilities they cannot imagine, and preparing for every outcome." His approach was subtle, almost invisible, but it carried a power greater than armies. The next few weeks were a blur of preparation. Marcus trained specialized teams in techniques the Orithians had rarely considered: small unit tactics, rapid adaptation, and deception. He also spent time studying the enemy coalition, identifying weaknesses in communication, supply, and coordination. Then the first major engagement came. The coalition attacked a border system, expecting a quick victory. Marcus's forces were small, but his planning was precise. He anticipated the enemy's moves, set traps, and used the terrain to his advantage. The battle was over before it began, strategically, decisively, and with minimal casualties. The coalition was forced to retreat, humiliated by a force they had assumed weak and disorganized. Valoria watched from the palace communications hub, heart racing with a mixture of awe and fear. She had always known humans were resourceful, but she had never imagined one could command events with such precision and foresight. After the battle, Marcus gathered with the Queen in the strategy room. Holograms of fleets and planets flickered across the walls, showing the coalition's positions and the Empire's responses. "They will return," Marcus said quietly. "And when they do, we must be ready, not just with armies, but with understanding. Every move they make, every assumption they hold against humans will be used against them. We turn their arrogance into their weakness. It is patience, preparation, and the ability to act when others are frozen by expectation. That is what humans do best." Over the following days, the palace adjusted to the presence of the human strategist. Advisors, once skeptical, sought his counsel. Soldiers trained under his guidance, improving faster than ever before. And the Queen observed quietly, learning from his approach to conflict, leadership, and human ingenuity. Yet, for all his brilliance, Marcus remained humble. He never sought recognition, never flaunted his skill, and never underestimated his opponents. He knew that true power was invisible until it acted, and his actions were precise, deliberate, and calculated. Late one night, Valoria found Marcus alone in the strategy room. The holograms of the galaxy shifted as he moved pieces across virtual battlefields, testing outcomes, adjusting variables, and predicting enemy behavior. "You are always thinking," she said softly. Marcus looked up, his expression calm. "Always, if we do not anticipate, we are at the mercy of events. If we do not adapt, we fall behind. That is how humans survived on Earth. That is how we will survive here." As the first lights of dawn touched the crystal towers of the palace, Valoria knew one thing with certainty. The galaxy had not yet seen what humans were capable of, and Marcus was about to show them. The coalition, confident in their superiority, did not yet understand the challenge they faced. They assumed weakness. They assumed predictability. And they would soon learn the hard way that humans were far more dangerous than any being they had encountered. And at the heart of it all stood Marcus, quiet, calm, and ready. A human, underestimated by an entire galaxy, holding within him the power of survival, strategy, and war. The queen had chosen a husband, never realizing she had chosen a war incarnate. The stage was set. The galaxy held its breath, unaware that the tide was already turning, led by a human mind that could see the patterns where others saw only chaos. The galaxy was beginning to change. Word of the human strategist spread quickly, first through whispers among the outer colonies, and then through urgent reports to the coalition that threatened the Orithian Empire. They had assumed that a single human, chosen by the Queen, would be nothing more than a curiosity, an easily ignored oddity. Now, they were beginning to realize that he was far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. Marcus moved through the palace with the quiet confidence of a man who understood not only the mechanics of war, but the psychology of those around him. Every officer, every soldier, every advisor he interacted with became part of his calculations, a piece on the larger board that was the Empire's survival. To the Queen, it was both fascinating and unnerving. She had married a human she had expected to be ordinary, and yet every day revealed a layer of intellect, foresight, and adaptability that made her question her own assumptions about power. Reports arrived from the outer systems that the coalition was mobilizing for a major strike. Their fleet was vast, their coordination more sophisticated than any previous threat. The Orithian Council convened in an emergency session, projecting holograms of the approaching enemy and discussing defensive strategies. The generals argued over troop placements, fleet positioning, and the timing of strikes. Their voices were filled with urgency and tension, but none seemed able to see a path that would guarantee success. Marcus stood slightly apart, observing. His eyes were calm, calculating, and unhurried. He spoke only once the discussion had reached a point where his input could redirect the conversation. "They will expect a conventional defense," he said. "They will assume we will rely on our numbers, our fleets, and our technology. But humans and those who think like us act differently. We must disrupt their expectations." "Are you suggesting we abandon our tactics?" She had always relied on logic, tradition, and experience, but Marcus was showing her a way to think beyond the predictable. His methods were subtle yet deadly effective, and she realized that the human mind, underestimated for so long, could see patterns that even her council could not. Over the next several days, Marcus trained specialized teams in preparation for the approaching conflict. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were chosen for their adaptability, intelligence, and ability to act independently. Marcus taught them how to anticipate the enemy's moves, how to use the environment to their advantage, and how to exploit weaknesses in communication and coordination. His lessons were rigorous, precise, and mentally exhausting, but the soldiers thrived under his guidance. In the palace, Veloria watched him work. She was struck by his patience, his clarity, and the way he inspired those around him. Unlike many leaders, Marcus did not demand loyalty through fear or status. He earned respect through competence, insight, and unwavering calm. Soldiers followed him not because they had to, but because they wanted to see the strategy succeed, to be part of something greater than themselves. The first engagement of the larger campaign came sooner than expected. The coalition launched a coordinated attack on a critical system near the Empire's border. Marcus had positioned his units carefully, anticipating the enemy's movements and predicting their attempts at intimidation. The battle began with a series of feints and diversions. Small Orithian units, guided by Marcus's strategies, struck where the enemy least expected, disrupting supply lines and communications. The coalition, confident in their superior numbers, reacted slowly, struggling to adapt to the unpredictable attacks. Each strike by Marcus's forces created confusion and doubt, and soon, the coalition's advantage began to crumble. Veloria monitored the battle from the palace's command center. She could see the enemy's fleets faltering, the precision of Marcus's tactics making each of their movements appear clumsy and desperate. She realized fully for the first time that the human she had chosen as a husband was not merely clever. He was a force that could shape the course of war itself. As the battle continued, Marcus coordinated the movements of multiple units simultaneously. He issued instructions calmly, anticipating the enemy's reactions and adapting in real time to unexpected developments. His approach was not aggressive for the sake of aggression. It was controlled, calculated, and always focused on achieving maximum effect with minimal loss. By the end of the engagement, the coalition had been forced to retreat, suffering losses far greater than they had anticipated. Reports flowed in, confirming the human strategist's brilliance. The soldiers of the Orithian Empire celebrated quietly, understanding that they had witnessed something extraordinary. After the battle, Marcus met with Veloria in a private chamber. The queen's expression was a mixture of awe and contemplation. "You were brilliant," she said softly. "I see now that humans are not as weak as the galaxy believes, and yet you are more than just brilliant. You are something entirely different. That is how humans endure, and that is how we will endure here." In the days that followed, Marcus continued to prepare the Empire for further conflict. He analyzed reports, predicted movements, and refined strategies. The coalition, once confident, now moved cautiously, unsure how to respond to an opponent who acted unpredictably yet with precision. The Queen found herself relying on Marcus more than ever. She consulted him on political matters, on military strategy, and even on alliances with other species. His insights were consistently valuable, offering perspectives that others could not see. She realized that in choosing him, she had not only gained a husband but also a partner capable of guiding the Empire through crises that would have overwhelmed even the most experienced Orithians. One evening, as they walked through the palace gardens, Veloria spoke quietly. "Marcus, I believed I was choosing a companion, someone to share the throne. I did not realize I was choosing a force capable of changing the fate of the Empire. The galaxy underestimates humans because it sees only physical power, not endurance, adaptability, or foresight. That is what we bring." His presence was transforming not only the Empire's approach to conflict, but also her own understanding of leadership and power. The next campaign would be larger and more dangerous. The coalition had regrouped, more determined than ever, and they underestimated neither the Queen nor her chosen husband this time. Marcus, however, remained calm. He had anticipated their moves, planned contingencies, and prepared his forces. He understood that war was as much about patience, observation, and intelligence as it was about strength and numbers. As the galaxy prepared for the next confrontation, the bond between Marcus and Veloria deepened. The Queen admired his intellect, his patience, and his ability to inspire those around him. Marcus respected her wisdom, her courage, and her willingness to embrace strategies that challenged tradition. Together, they formed a partnership that was both personal and strategic, combining human adaptability with alien intelligence. In quiet moments, Veloria reflected on the choice she had made. She had chosen a human expecting companionship, perhaps even curiosity. Instead, she had found a mind capable of outthinking entire fleets, outmaneuvering experienced generals, and reshaping the course of the Empire. She realized fully that she had married a war incarnate, a force that the galaxy had not yet begun to understand. Marcus, meanwhile, continued his preparations. Every report, every simulation, every movement was calculated with precision. He understood the stakes, the risks, and the potential consequences, and yet he remained calm, patient, and focused. He did not seek recognition, only results and the preservation of the Empire he now called home. The galaxy, vast and unknowable, held its breath. Forces moved, alliances shifted, and the next great confrontation approached. But Marcus was ready. He had studied, prepared, and anticipated. He understood the patterns where others saw chaos, and he was determined to use that understanding to protect the Empire, the Queen, and the people who now looked to him as a strategist, a leader, and a symbol of human ingenuity. As the twin suns set over the crystalline towers of the palace, Veloria and Marcus stood together, looking toward the horizon. The future was uncertain, the enemy formidable, and the challenges immense. Yet in that moment they both understood one truth. Humans were underestimated, intelligence was often overlooked, and the quiet mind could achieve what armies could not. The stage was set for the next great battle, and the galaxy was about to witness a human not as a soldier, but as a war itself. The galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Word had spread of the human who had outmaneuvered fleets, outthought generals, and changed the course of entire campaigns. The coalition, once confident, had gathered their full strength, determined to crush the Orithian Empire before the human could reshape their strategies again. Queen Veloria stood in the palace's command center, watching holograms of approaching fleets. Her advisors were tense, their usual confidence shaken. Every general, every officer looked to her for direction. Yet her mind, more than ever, was focused on the human standing beside her. Marcus. Marcus did not flinch. His eyes scanned the displays, calculating, predicting, planning. He had anticipated this full-scale assault, prepared contingencies for every possible scenario, and already positioned his forces in ways the coalition could not imagine. To the humans, the challenge was immense, but to Marcus, it was a puzzle, a problem to be solved with intelligence, foresight, and patience. "The enemy assumes we will respond conventionally," Marcus said calmly. "They will divide their forces into predictable formations, relying on numbers and technology. They will underestimate the flexibility and unpredictability of our strategies. We must make them react to us, not the other way around." Marcus's units, however, were already in motion, positioned with precision and hidden from sight. He had divided the Orithian forces into smaller, adaptable teams, each with specific objectives designed to exploit the coalition's assumptions. The battle unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony. Small Orithian units struck key points, disabling communication relays and supply ships. The coalition, expecting a direct confrontation, scrambled to respond, only to find themselves trapped in pockets of confusion. Every move Marcus had predicted played out exactly as he had anticipated. Valoria watched, amazed, as reports came in. Coalition forces were retreating from areas they thought secure, suffering losses far beyond their calculations. Marcus's strategies were not about brute force. They were about intelligence, timing, and manipulation. He turned their arrogance against them, proving that the mind could be deadlier than the largest fleet. In the midst of the battle, Marcus communicated with his commanders. His instructions were calm, precise, and immediate. Units repositioned with flawless timing, striking at weak points the enemy did not even know existed. Each decision minimized risk to Orithian forces while maximizing pressure on the coalition. The Queen realized something profound. Marcus was not merely a commander. He was a strategist born of human survival instincts, shaped by countless challenges that had honed his mind into a weapon as precise as any fleet or weaponry. She had thought she had married a companion, a husband to share her throne, but she now understood she had married a force capable of reshaping the galaxy itself. As the battle raged across multiple systems, Marcus's smaller units began to converge, cutting off retreat paths, isolating enemy squadrons, and creating confusion that the coalition could not resolve. The human mind, underestimated by an entire galaxy, was proving decisive. At one point, a coalition admiral attempted a risky maneuver, hoping to turn the tide by attacking the Empire's central fleet. Marcus anticipated this move. He repositioned forces to create a trap, channeling the enemy into a corridor of space where their numbers were useless and their technology ineffective. Within hours, the Admiral's fleet was neutralized, captured, or forced to flee. The Queen could hardly contain her awe. She had witnessed many great battles in her life, seen enemies defeated by superior numbers and technology, but she had never seen war controlled so completely by a single mind. Marcus had transformed the chaos of battle into a precise, flowing strategy that left the coalition reeling. As night fell over the Empire, Marcus convened a final briefing. The coalition's forces had been severely weakened, their coordination shattered, and their confidence broken. The Orithian army, inspired by Marcus's leadership, was unified, precise, and ready to strike decisively. "The enemy will regroup," Marcus said quietly. "They will attempt one last effort to reclaim control, but we know their weaknesses now. We know their patterns, their assumptions, and their limitations. Victory is within reach, not because of strength alone, but because we have anticipated, adapted, and acted where they least expect. They underestimate what they do not understand. That has always been our advantage." Using a combination of surprise attacks, feints, and coordinated strikes, the Orithians dismantled the coalition's formation. Ships were captured, key commanders neutralized, and entire fleets forced into retreat. The human-led strategies ensured that casualties were minimal, while the coalition suffered a crushing defeat. The battle was over in hours, but its effects would reverberate for years. The Queen watched Marcus from the command center, realizing the full extent of his brilliance. He had not simply defended the Empire. He had demonstrated that humans, underestimated for millennia, could wield intelligence, strategy, and adaptability as weapons more potent than fleets of ships or armies of soldiers. After the battle, Marcus convened a council to negotiate peace with the surviving coalition forces. He approached the negotiations not with threat or intimidation, but with strategy, foresight, and understanding of his opponent's psychology. His approach was measured, precise, and effective. Within days, treaties were signed, alliances forged, and stability restored. Veloria observed quietly, realizing that she had underestimated the human she had married. Marcus was not only a brilliant strategist and a survivor, he was also a diplomat, a thinker, and a leader whose influence extended far beyond the battlefield. The people of the Empire celebrated quietly, but with profound respect for the human who had guided them through their darkest hours. Soldiers who had fought under his direction spoke of his calm authority, his insight, and the way he anticipated every challenge. Citizens recognized that a human, once considered weak and fragile, had become a symbol of resilience, intelligence, and ingenuity. In private moments, Veloria reflected on the journey that had brought them here. She had chosen Marcus thinking she understood him, only to discover that she had married a mind shaped by war, survival, and brilliance. He was not merely a husband. He was a force capable of reshaping the destiny of an empire. Marcus, meanwhile, continued to observe, calculate, and prepare. Even in victory, he knew that peace was fragile, that new threats could emerge at any moment. His mind never rested, always analyzing, predicting, and adapting. Yet he allowed himself moments of quiet, moments with the Queen, moments where the weight of survival and strategy could be set aside, if only briefly. In one such moment, Veloria joined him on the balcony overlooking the palace. The twin moons reflected in her eyes as she turned to him. "I have seen what you are capable of," she said. "And yet I still do not fully understand you. You are not just human, you are something more." She understood now that the galaxy's view of humans had been incomplete, biased by assumptions of weakness. The human she had chosen as a husband had not only survived, but had proven that intelligence, foresight, and adaptability could challenge the most powerful forces in the universe. The Empire settled into a new era. Marcus and Veloria ruled together, their partnership a combination of human ingenuity and alien wisdom. The coalition, humbled and cautious, respected the Empire's newfound strength. Across the galaxy, humans began to be seen differently, not as weak creatures, but as beings capable of extraordinary strategy, resilience, and leadership. And at the heart of it all was Marcus, the human who had been underestimated, the quiet mind who had turned war itself into a calculated art. He had proven that survival, intelligence, and adaptability were as powerful as any fleet, and perhaps more so. Veloria stood beside him on the palace balcony, watching the stars above. "I thought I had chosen a husband," she said softly. "I did not realize I had chosen a war." A human had entered an empire of unmatched power, married its most influential ruler, and reshaped the destiny of countless worlds. And though the galaxy had yet to understand the full extent of what had occurred, one thing was clear. Humanity, underestimated for so long, had proven itself a force to be reckoned with. The story of the human and the alien queen ended not with destruction, but with triumph, respect, and the promise of a future where intelligence, courage, and adaptability could challenge even the greatest powers in the universe. And in the quiet of the palace, as the stars glimmered far beyond, the queen and her humans stood together, a symbol of what could be achieved when the underestimated rise, when strategy meets courage, and when a single mind could change the fate of a galaxy.